Okay guys, so in this lesson we're going to take a look at absolute value functions as well as absolute value inequalities. One thing you need to know is that an absolute value graph is a piecewise defined function that takes the shape of a V. Okay, the absolute value function has the general form a times x minus h plus k, and the x minus h is in absolute value. The a is going to be the slope going up from each side. The h and the k is the vertex. Okay, so as we graph that, make sure you pay attention to those points. Okay, so first one, we're going to graph this equation right here. Okay, so we're going to start at the point 4 and negative 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, and negative 1. I'm going to put a point right there. Now, so that's the vertex. It's always minus right here. So it's minus right here. So this would actually be a positive. Okay, so you pretty much just change the sign of whatever's right here for the x coordinate. The y coordinate, you just take whatever's on the outside. Okay, so we're going to go up 2 and over 1 in each direction. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And we're going to draw our graph. So it's going to look something like that. Okay? So it looks like a V. Next example problem. So we're going to locate the vertex. The vertex is going to be at the point negative 4, 6. So I'm going to go to the point negative 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I have a negative 3 slope, so I'm going to go down 3 and over 1 in each direction. 1, 2, 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then 1, 2, 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. Yeah. Use my ruler this time. And so our graph is going to look like that. Okay. So I'm not sure in Algebra 2 or Algebra 1 if you learned how to graph these. So that's why we're covering this. Now, in order to solve absolute value equations, you have to drop the absolute value and you have to make sure that you put plus or minus. Okay, so when I drop absolute values, I'm going to put plus or minus 9. Okay, just like that. And I have two answers. So x is going to be equal to 3 and x is going to be equal to a negative 3. And that's it. So the whole goal is to isolate the absolute value. Next one. So I'm going to isolate the absolute value, and so I get absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to a negative 1/2. Now, we're going to stop there. We're going to pump our brakes. Anytime we get an absolute value is equal to a negative number, it's going to be no solution. Okay? So there's no need to go any further. Absolute value is always positive. Okay? Now, when we drop it, we get the plus or minus, but an absolute value is always equal to a positive number. Okay, next one, n over 3 and the absolute value is equal to 2. So in order to drop the absolute value, I put plus or minus. So I get n is equal to 6, and n is equal to a negative 6. Okay, next one, in order to drop the absolute value, I have to put plus or minus, so I get negative 4 plus 5x is equal to 16, and negative 4 plus 5x is equal to a negative 16. Okay, we're going to add 4 to the other side. 16 plus 4 is 20, so we get x is equal to 4. And then I'm going to add the 4 to the other side. We get 5x is equal to, what, negative 12. So x comes out to be negative 12/5. Okay, so those are some pretty simple solving ones so far. Next page of notes, okay? So the absolute value is isolated, so I'm going to drop the absolute value signs and I'm going to put my plus and my minus. So 1 minus 5a is equal to a negative 29. Okay, so I'm going to solve for a. So I'm going to subtract the 1 to the other side. So I get negative 5a is equal to 28. So a is equal to a negative 28 over 5. I'm going to subtract 1 to the other side here. So I get negative 5a is equal to a negative 30. So a is equal to 6. Okay, last one in this section, and we'll move on to inequalities. So we're going to have to isolate the absolute value sign. Okay, so we're going to subtract 2 to both sides. So we get negative 5m minus 5 is equal to a negative 75. Okay, so we're going to divide both sides by negative 5. So 75 divided by 5, I believe, is 15. I'm just going to double check that real quick. It's 15. Okay, now in order to drop the absolute value signs, we're going to put plus or minus. So we get 5m minus 5 is equal to 15. And we're going to get 5m minus 5 is equal to a negative 15. Okay, we're going to add our 5. So we get 20. And so we get m is equal to 4. Add our 5. So m is equal to a negative 2. Okay, and that shows up on SAT, so you need to make sure you know how to do that. This also shows up on SAT. You need to make sure you know how to do it. Okay, some important things about absolute value inequalities. If the absolute value is less than a number, it's going to be something we call an and if it's greater than, it's going to be an or. Okay, so this one is going to be an and because the absolute value is less than a number. Okay, so what we do is we sandwich it in between the plus and the minus, and we drop the absolute value signs like that. Okay, so to solve for n, we're going to multiply both terms by 4. Like that. And if I'm going to write this in interval notation, like it says to do, it's going to look like that. Close brackets because of the equal to signs. Now, it says to graph the solutions. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw this nice little number line. We're going to put negative 12 and 12 like that. They're going to be closed brackets. If we're doing points, then you can do points like that. And we're going to shade in between. So ands are always shaded in between. Okay? So next question is going to be an or because the absolute value is greater than a number. I'm just going to write or out to the side. So when we're doing ors, you do x over, so we'll do the whatever's in the absolute value is greater than or equal to 5. Or we say x over 6 is less than or equal to a negative 5. Oh, golly, I keep hitting my camera, sorry. So when we do this, you do the original and drop it and leave the positive, and then you flip the gator mouth and change this to a negative. So I'm going to solve for x here, so I get x is greater than or equal to 30, or x is less than or equal to a negative 30. So if I was to write this in interval notation, it's going to be from negative infinity to negative 30, close parentheses. Now when we have multiple intervals, we use this u, that means union, with 30 to infinity, and that's going to be a closed bracket. That's going to be open parentheses like that. So that's what it looks like in interval notation. They both mean the same thing. Now, we always work from left to right, so that's why this one is written first. Okay, so I'm going to put me a negative 30 and a 30 on a number line. They're solid points because of the equal to sign. And we're going to shade away like that. So ors are always going to be going in opposite directions. Okay, next one we have absolute value is less than a number, so it's going to be an and. Okay, so we're going to sandwich it in between the positive and the negative. Like that. Now we're going to solve this like a normal equation. We got to get rid of the 9 first, so we're going to add 9 to both terms. 16, no, 18. 18. So negative 18 is less than 4b is less than 36. And then we're going to divide both terms by 4. Okay, so we're going to divide by 4, divide this by 4, divide this by 4. Okay, so 18 divided by 4 can simplify to negative 9/2 v, and then 36 divided by 4 is 9. Okay, so if we're doing interval notation, it's going to go between negative 9/2 and 9. And our number line is going to be open circles, negative 9/2, 9, parentheses, and we're shading in between. So ands you shade in between, ors go opposite directions. Okay, next one, absolute value is greater than 14. This is going to be an or. So we're going to do 10 plus 4x is greater than 14. And then we're going to do or 10 plus 4x is less than 14. And we're going to solve for x. So we're going to subtract 10. So we get x is greater than 1. Or 14 minus 10 is 4. Sorry, it should be negative 14. Sorry, negative 14. So I subtract the 10s, should be negative 24. And we're going to divide by 4, so x is less than negative 6. Okay, so make sure when you do an or, you do the original, drop the absolute value sign, or flip the gator mouth and change that to a negative. Okay, so when we go to write this in interval notation, it's going to be negative infinity to negative 6 in union with 1 to infinity. And we're going to put a negative 6, and we're going to put a 1, parentheses, and we're going to shade away from one another like that. And that's how we do that. Okay, on to the next page, and almost done. Okay, so in order to isolate the absolute value on this one, we're going to multiply both sides by 2. So we get 2 plus 3x is greater than or equal to 10. Okay, so this is going to be an or because the absolute value is greater than a number. So we're going to do 2 plus 3x is greater than or equal to 10, or 2 plus 3x is less than or equal to a negative 10. So we're going to solve for x. We get 3x is greater than or equal to 8. So x is greater than or equal to 8/3. Or subtract the 2, we get 3x is less than or equal to a negative 12. So x is less than or equal to a negative 4. If we're going to write this in interval notation, it's going to be negative infinity to negative 4. It's equal to, so we use close brackets, 8/3 to infinity. Okay, and if we're going to do our little number line, negative 4 goes this way, and 8/3 goes this way. And if you want to put solid dots, put solid dots. Okay. Okay, so whenever we're doing absolute value and it is greater than or equal to a negative, just like what we did at the first section, we pump our brakes as soon as we see it's equal to a negative, once we've isolated it. Okay, absolute value is always positive. Okay, so if this is always positive, it will always be greater than a negative number. So this is all real numbers. And the interval is going to be negative infinity to positive infinity if we show that. If you're showing a number line, it's all shaded in. Okay? And last one, absolute value is less than negative 6. So an absolute value is always positive. So this is always positive, this is always positive. Okay, a positive number will never be less than a negative number, so this is going to be no solution. Okay, and it's just an empty number line if we're going to draw that. Okay, so this has been a good little review over solving inequalities and solving equations dealing with absolute value. Make sure that when you drop the absolute value, put plus or minus when you're solving the equation, and you're able to identify the and the or. Remember, ands shade in between, ors shade away from one another. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks, and have a good night.